It's Monday, and you know what that means. Added time on the channel, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's video. Let's get into them straight away here from Samay, who asked, how did you rate the performances of Billy Gilmour and Callum Hudson-Odoi against Morecambe? Very impressed with both of them yesterday, I think for different reasons. And yes, whenever we speak about yesterday's game, there's going to be the caveat of the opposition, the nature of the game, how dominant Chelsea were in it. But I think for both, it was very important that they played well and had a positive influence in the game, which both did. Billy Gilmour, the fact that N'Golo Kante is going to be suspended for the Fulham game, I think it's key that Lampard plays him there, and I think he will. The fact that Jorginho didn't play out, I spoke about this in my Let's Talk Chelsea episode earlier about Gilmour. I think it's a massive vote of confidence that Gilmour played instead of Jorginho there, and I expect him to start again at Craven Cottage at the weekend. And for Callum Hudson-Odoi, I've been so impressed with him for a number of games now. This is not, you can dismiss yesterday really, because if you just look at the impact he's had against Arsenal, against Man City, scoring against Man City, but also creating a goal for Tammy Abraham against Arsenal. I think he played really well when he started against Aston Villa, even though he didn't impact the scoreline, scoring or assisting a goal. I think all round his play was very encouraging. He's being a lot more direct. I like the fact he's a lot more clinical in front of goal this season. I think that's clearly something he's worked on, and I think he knows he has to improve on it, because if he wants to continually play under Lampard in such a competitive area of the pitch with players like Ziyech, Pulisic, we know Timo Werner can potentially play out wide as well. It's difficult for Callum, it really is, but he needs to assert himself, and I think he's doing all he can currently to get into the first team. I don't think, especially on the pitch, we don't know what happens at Cobham, but I feel he's doing all he can to get into the first team picture, and I think it's very likely he starts that game against Fulham. I think he'd be disappointed. I'd be a bit disappointed, but it's difficult at the moment because I love Christian Pulisic. I love watching Christian Pulisic play, and I feel that Pulisic is on the brink of having another big performance with Chelsea. So it's tough. It's a headache for Lampard, but I feel that Hudson-Odoi has just done enough for me to earn a Premier League start. King of Energy asked, do you think Lampard's tactics just involve a lot of passes through the air rather than balls on the ground? When at its best, we are breaking the lines through the air rather than just end-line crosses. I agree, and I get some people's frustration with the crossing and the crossing a lot of the time in games without much success, especially recently as form has derailed basically, and we've had some difficult days. I feel that it's harsh to have a go at Lampard for utilising brilliant crossers like Reece James and Hakim Ziyech. I think he'd be getting criticised, and I'd be criticising him with players of that ability from a cross if you aren't utilising them. I think all summer we were speaking about Ziyech and his crossing ability and the ability of him to get balls into the box for the likes of Timo Werner and Christian Pulisic and Olivier Giroud, the same with Reece James. He's used that, and he's clearly seen that as a strength of his game. It's not the only way Chelsea attack. Sometimes it's difficult if a team crowds out the middle, they sit so deep. Sometimes you have to do that. My only frustration is sometimes with personnel on the pitch at the time, considering the opponent. If a team is sitting very deep and you have to go out wide and have to use overlapping fullbacks to get the ball into the box to create opportunities, when Timo's in there and he doesn't have any support from anyone else, it's going to be very difficult to create chances, and you're sort of hoping that something naturally falls for him, or the opposing team makes a mistake, or we're hitting from distance like Mason Mount was yesterday. I want to see Kai Havertz get into the box a lot more, give support to a player like Timo Werner if he's playing centrally. If someone like Giroud is up front, I have a lot more confidence that you can go out wide and hit a lot more crosses into the box, as we've seen not only from Reece James, but Ben Chilwell this season has created a couple of goals for Giroud from that way. So I don't think it's a negative. I think if the game opens up a bit more and Chelsea have a little bit more space, you will see the likes of Christian Pulisic and even Timo Werner go through central areas too. So it's not like Chelsea can't score in different ways. I just think utilising our strengths, I think, is a big thing in attack, and that's clearly something Lampard has focused on. Candy CFC asks, have you covered your ideal formation for this Chelsea team on your channel yet? I would love for you to tell us if you haven't already. I, of course, made a video last week, my collab with Jay McIntosh on the Every Other Saturday podcast. Please go and watch that. It's a two-part discussion. The second part, we speak about formations and how much of a complex issue it is at the moment. I don't think there is a simple solution, to be honest. In the summer, when I made my sort of predicted 11, I went with 4-3-3. I still think 4-3-3 is the best formation Lampard has, because I think it suits the most amount of his players. I even think if Kai can get back, the biggest issue at the moment is Kai and Timo, but I think some of that is down to their personal form as well. I think, some of them underperforming. I think that's an issue. When N'Golo Kante, when he's personally underperforming in a game, everyone turns around and goes, should he be moved out of position? Sometimes I think it's just the player themselves has a poor day at the office, and you need to put it down to that rather than him playing poorly in that role. I think that look back a month ago to when we were speaking about the 4-3-3 as a brilliant formation. Everything seems so balanced. I think to have a run of games, I think that all the formations Lampard's used, I think the most consistent one, or the one that has brought the most consistent results, has been the 4-3-3. That doesn't mean that Frank can't be flexible, but I'd probably say that at the moment, and I think that's what Lampard's going to stick to, at least with the players he has, and at least what he's used so far this season. FL8RJ24, what would be your front three without injuries for the rest of the season? A great luxury, I'm sure, for Lampard and for us to not have any injuries in that attacking area. Very difficult question. I know a lot of people would go Pulisic, Werner, Ziyech. I feel with Callum, Hudson-Odoi's recent form, that's really opened things up. It's difficult, and it's the headache Lampard has, but I think in the other sense, I think it's good that Lampard has competition there. I think for years, Chelsea have struggled, whether it was with Eden Hazard on the left, or we had Willian and Pedro, where it was quite sort of predictable what front three Chelsea would be putting out. I think now that Lampard has that variety with different attackers that can do different things. I mean, if you're putting out Ziyech, you know what type of winger you're getting. You know, he's not sort of the out-and-out winger of a Pulisic or Hudson-Odoi who's going to hug the touchline. Ziyech can come a little bit more centrally, and he's going to try and cross the ball into the box and be a bit more of almost a central midfielder at times. You know, he's a much more elegant winger than, say, your Pulisic, who can do off-the-ball runs. He's going to take men one-on-one and try and get past them and score goals. So it's that tactical and sort of variety of personnel that Lampard has, that flexibility and versatility that we praised in the summer with our acquisitions, that I think should excite fans. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is going to be the guaranteed front three, because I haven't seen one. At least, you know, Pulisic, Ziyech and Werner haven't played together much as a front three yet. Only one game, and that was Man City. If I see that for a run of games and it works, Lampard will stick to that, but still has the freedom to switch things around, which I think is a positive. Adam asks, does Kepa's solid performance earn him a start over a slightly out of form Mendy, given his value needs to be risen? No, I don't think it does. It was Morecambe at home, and we nearly conceded in that game. To be fair, I don't think it was awful from Kepa. It was just it was a pretty decent cross, and he got it right in the end and kept it out. No, I think that Mendy, I know there's been some criticism of Mendy, and I know the stats recently have showed that he's underperforming slightly, or has, you know, conceded more goals than expected. I think that's just more of a general team thing. I still want Mendy in there. I think Mendy, you know, even though he's conceded some goals recently, I think it still shows you the physicality and the dominance within that area that Kepa just doesn't bring you. I still feel confident when we concede a corner that Mendy can get to it and really dominate his area. I think if Chelsea start getting back to good form, don't forget what Mendy did in the opening weeks when he came in at Chelsea and the impact he had. I think there's a lot more trust there, and I think Kepa, it's no return now for me. He can play a couple of FA Cup games. In terms of his fee and sort of value being risen, I don't think it's going to have much impact, to be honest, and it could actually devalue. If Lampard plays him, say against Fulham, and he concedes a few goals and has another terrible performance, that's only going to hurt his confidence and hurt his value. So I think for Lampard, he needs to be selfish, play Mendy again, because he's the first choice goalkeeper this season. Calvin asks, I honestly want Lampard to succeed, but if he is replaced, who do you see replacing him if it was done at the end of the season? Do you see Julian Nagelsmann as a viable option? I like Nagelsmann, I like Marco Reus in the Bundesliga, I like Hudson-Odoi. A lot of sort of German or Austrian coaches, you know, around that area, Chelsea apparently have been looking at. I've seen some reports recently. Once again, I'm stating here, I want Lampard to stay. I feel that this is the issue I'm going to have with any coach you bring up to me at the moment is, do we have the setup in place for them to succeed? I think it's very easy to look at Nagelsmann at Leipzig, or Rose at Mönchengladbach, or Hasenhüttl at Southampton, and not understand the underlying principles or the foundation. Even Klopp at Liverpool, for instance, a lot of comparisons or a lot of fans bring up to defend Lampard, Klopp at Liverpool. Not only Klopp's experience at Mainz, but also at Dortmund before arriving to Liverpool, but also the setup of Liverpool to really help Klopp succeed at the club. My concern with any coach that comes into Chelsea, no matter their experience, is the short-term philosophy, the immense pressure to succeed under difficult circumstances, the belief that you have to be in a title challenge within 1 or 2 seasons, despite the squad you have, despite the circumstances you're given. I've seen that with a variety of coaches. So I think that sometimes I've seen people try and spin Lampard as an anomaly, and we have to treat him as just that. But, you know, if you're not going to give Lampard the time, we haven't given coaches with more experience and a grander CV more time. So I don't know what's going to change. I think fundamental things at Chelsea have to change for those managers to be given more time. And people want progressive football. They want to see a Nagelsmann come in and instill his philosophy like Tuchel. But unless you're willing to give that manager the backing over a period of time to do that, then I think it's going to be very difficult to see any of those managers truly succeed. And also the pressure on them to be short term leads to more reactive football and compromise, which I don't think is the best thing for those coaches. And lastly, Dylan asks, who would your player of the season be so far? For me, it would be Mount or Chile. I feel those are two great options, to be honest. I think probably people have slightly forgotten about Reece James because he had some difficult days against Wolves and Arsenal recently, but I think Reece has to be up there as well. I think it says a lot about the quality of our young players that when you're talking about players, some of the best players we've had so far this season, Mount and Reece, you know, guaranteed starters when they're fit at the moment. And I saw so many people, especially for Mount in the summer, saying he wouldn't be anywhere near this team. I mean, he has made fools of a lot of people this year, and he continues to do so with his consistent quality and importance to Frank Lampard. So for me, Mason, I think, has to be up there. I think it's a little bit harsh on Reece because, of course, he's been injured in recent weeks. So I think Reece is right up there. Ben Chilwell, I think, for what he's offered at left back, everything I hoped he would, despite difficult recent weeks. I think he's been an amazing signing for Chelsea. Thiago Silva too, at his best, I think he's been brilliant. I think a lot of, you know, despite the defensive problems recently, I think that a lot of the defensive players, I think you have to be impressed by, at least in earlier parts of the season. And attacking wise, I'm always going to look towards Olivier Giroud. I think he's done so well once again as a professional. I don't think you can put it past him getting back into the picture once again and proving himself. So those type of players I'll go for. And I think despite, you know, dropping form recently, I think N'Golo Kante as well in earlier parts of the season had some brilliant performances. So just to push me for one, I'd probably say Mason Mount, but just behind him is going to be Reece James, who I think has been exceptional as well. But that is it for this episode of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it and submitting your questions. Apologies to those I didn't get to. Once again, next Monday, Added Time, you can submit your questions for the episode on Twitter at SonOfChelsea and also my community page on the channel. Both requests are given on Sunday, so I post on Twitter and also the community page, so go there to submit your questions on a Sunday. But thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.